Welcome, Anna. Thank you so much for joining
Oh,
me. So
thanks
good
for
to see
having
you.
me. I've been so excited to talk to you, Chloe.
And congratulations on your latest book, The Uncomfortable
Thank
Truth. It
you.
is absolutely genius. It really does address so many of my personal worries and fears, but I think the things that are so universal to us as humans are things that we all kind of worry about. And it's really laid out in such a easy to read way and just hits on so many of those points. I can't wait to dig into some of the themes and topics. What made
Oh,
you write this book now? What kind of led you to
oh,
write it?
yeah. Do you know what? Those kind of defining moments that you don't forget. I was actually sat at my desk, and I think one of my kids had achy legs, like growing pains. And in my head, I went off down the road of childhood cancer, as we often do. So that was my one of my biggest fears really is losing my kids, as any parent would definitely echo. But having lost a sister to cancer, that's a very easy place for my brain to go. And I just remember thinking of my mum and how when we were little, she she said when each of us was sleeping when we were kind of a few months old, she kind of stood over our cots and just really recognized that ultimately, we were a gift and we weren't necessarily a forever gift. We were in her life to do the best she could with. And she just kind of had this moment of relinquishing control. And that must have just been one of the most, it was pertinent because she ended up losing one of her children. But I think my fear is this grasping on of the things I have and the things I love and value in my life. And I think in that moment, in that morning, I was like, instead of just constantly fearing the worst happening, what if I just accepted that or found a way to have greater acceptance of the fact that bad things do happen? And I recognized, it got me thinking. I was thinking one of the other things that has so much control and historically has had so much control over me is people not liking me. So I thought I'm going to try a different way of doing it. So I started saying to myself, normally in my head if I was out and about, but sometimes out loud at home, some people won't like me. Bad things are going to happen. I'm going to fail. And it's some kind of really upside down positive, you know, positive statement, and it's kind of sounds a bit backwards, but actually what I found was that it just started eroding that fear. And I just found slowly this greater acceptance of the fact that, yeah, life is so fragile, bad things are going to happen, some people won't like me, I will fail at stuff. But and just felt like I started living more confidently alongside those truths instead of constantly trying to like white knuckle grip my way through avoiding them. So that's kind of where the book sprung from. Was just let's just try and just accept that these things are true about being human, and see what happens. It's just going to be so
Yeah,
liberating.
it's so interesting. I think so much of anxiety is our worries about the what ifs, and
Mm,
we we're kind of thinking about things going wrong or imagining things going wrong, and it ruins our peace in the moment because we're trying to kind of prepare, or we
yeah,
think if we worry about it then it won't be such a shock if it happens or something, or we'll somehow think our way out of think our way into control about the future somehow, which is obviously
yeah.
completely impossible. And yet, yeah, having acceptance for things rather than trying to control them and hold on so tightly just, yeah, seems very freeing.
Yeah, it is. It's hard though. And I think what it made me realize is that so much of my identity and how I do relationships and how I go around life is just about like trying to avoid these things from happening. And actually in doing so, I can't be present within them. Like if I'm having a nice moment on a Sunday afternoon, playing games with my kids, just chilling, I can look at that little scene and I can think, oh my gosh, I'm so scared. Like, because love makes me feel really vulnerable, and enjoying things makes you feel vulnerable because you're kind of giving yourself to it, aren't you? You're kind of at the mercy of joy in a way, saying, I'm going to give myself to this moment. I'm going to be present, knowing full well that it's momentary or I could lose this, that not everything is forever. So as I found more comfort I've in or just more acceptance of the unknowns, it's actually enabled, it's freed me up just to think, yeah, I might lose this, but actually this is what is here now. This is because so much just gets robbed, I think, by fear.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, and one of the the truths that the uncomfortable truths that you ask us to sort
Yeah.
of consider and to dig into a bit is this truth that some people won't like us.
Yeah.
And I remember, I think I first saw that on your Instagram. You did a reel about it, and you were saying some people aren't going to like you. They're not going to like you. And I was like, oh, there was part of me, even though I know that kind of on the surface, there was part of me
Yeah.
that was like, I don't want to accept that almost. Like it's very uncomfortable to kind of accept that, even though of course it's, true. But there's part of me that wants to resist that, that still believes that I can control, what
Yeah.
people think or that sort of thing. But I don't know if that's a common kind of experience that you've seen in
Yeah,
people.
absolutely. And for me in my own life, my whole identity has been so wrapped up in what people think about me and wanting to help people and be kind to people and be seen to be a good person and a nice girl and a good girl. And actually, yeah, people pleasing does mean that probably more people do like you. Because when you give yourself away and you do anything and everything you can to please people, more people are going to be pleased. But on the other hand, it gives a huge amount of power to those moments when someone gives you some critical feedback, or someone looks at you in a certain way, or someone doesn't respond to a message that you sent in the way that you might have been expecting, or someone isn't as grateful for something that you really sacrificed for them to the extent that you hope they would be grateful by way of almost recognizing and repaying it. And I think our identity can become so reliant on someone else giving us that approval. And difficult. It's a difficult line to live on because not everyone is going to give you what you need by that in that way, and it can then have you spiraling and thinking, right, how can I put it right, how can I win them round, how can I, when actually some people just won't get you because of how they've lived and who they are and how they see the world. And that is nothing that you can change or control. And some people need to not like you in order to validate something in themselves or a decision that they've made. Or, and there are just so many reasons, and so often they're little to do with us at all. So kind of, yeah,
Mm.
starting to loosen my grip on that people pleasing need to be liked is actually, it's been the biggest, most liberating thing, life changing.
Mm. Yeah, I guess we don't know what we might be triggering in another person just by being the way we are. We all have our triggers, don't we? This
Yeah.
woman was, one of mine, which I am, have really worked on, but probably is still there a bit. If someone's really loud and really confident, part of me says, oh, they're showing off. Because that's something my mum used
Yeah.
to say to me. And that's actually nothing to do with the other person being who they are, but it's my kind of insecurity. And so that person, can't control my kind of triggers about that.
Yeah.
So yeah, we can't control people's kind of
That's so
programming or the triggers or the
interesting.
little things that we all have that mean that we dislike people that actually have to do with us and our own stuff, not really the
Yeah.
other
And
person at
sometimes
all.
it can be about envy. Sometimes we can see someone really confident and we can think, I recognize that Chloe actually in myself, that all they're showing off. But actually, intermingled with that kind of disdain and judgment is sometimes a bit of jealousy. In fact, I want to be that confident that I can
Yeah.
just waltz in and be myself unapologetically. So sometimes what we do is we kind of take something and down a peg or two to make it less attractive to ourselves. Because it's
Mm,
harder to look at someone and think, they're actually, I really want a bit of that,
yeah.
because that's a challenge, isn't it, for us to think, okay, what is it about that person that I feel a bit of envy of? How might I cultivate that? What do I need to address in myself? Where can I step out? That's so much harder than saying, oh, they're a show off. I'm glad I'm not like that. That feels safer,
Yeah,
doesn't
yeah,
it? So
yeah.
sometimes these things are multi-layered, but I recognize that in myself. And actually, for me, intermingled with that has sometimes been envy.
Mm. Yeah, and as you're speaking, I'm kind of thinking about, the younger Chloe who was quite loud and who, teachers said I was too much and, Chloe's got so much energy or Chloe's this or that. And, am I sort of suppressing that side of myself and then kind of projecting that onto other people that that's not okay?
Yeah.
That's very deep,
It's
very
so
deep.
interesting to think about these things, though, isn't it? When something is triggered inside of us, we either kind of want to destroy it a little bit so it doesn't have such an impact, or yeah, we can do that digging and think, what's that saying about me? What might I be hiding or suppressing, or what might I be yearning for? And that's the harder bit, and it is easier just to kind of shut something down, isn't it?
Yeah. In the book, you share so many sort of client stories and your own stories, and also sort of practical tools and ideas, and just sort of little mindset shifts to get your head around. Was there anything that you could share around this truth of kind of people aren't going to like us that people can sort of implement into their lives?
Yeah, so I think sometimes it is just that recognition. Like I share a story in the book how there was this girl at uni. She just wasn't, I just got the sense that she didn't like me very much. And I gave her extra special attention. I was, we're going to sort this out. You're going to like me. I'm going to be extra kind to you. I mean, I was probably a bit annoying to be fair. And I remember her drunk one evening. I think we were out, too many VK cherries. And she turned to me and she said, Anna, I know why I don't like you now. And I thought, well, there we go. You've just validated what I'd been thinking. She said, it's because you remind me of my cousin who wasn't very nice to me. And in that moment, it was just this kind of light bulb that switched on and thought, I have spent so much of myself trying to win her round. Yet the reason that she did not like me was actually something so far removed from anything within my realms of control that it just made me realize how people feel or think about us is often to do with us at all. And, I think just that recognition, that acknowledgement that you might be scrabbling around for a reason as to why that person seems to feel a certain way about you. Whereas actually, sometimes the biggest gift that you can give yourself is to turn that attention towards those relationships in which, yeah, you feel connected to. All that headspace that it can take up as we are ruminating over and trying to dissect and make sense of something that doesn't feel like it makes sense. Either we can have a conversation with that person and get some clarity, and even then we might not, or we can just think, where else might I direct that energy? Because it's likely that whatever is going on there isn't doesn't say anything about me as a person. Like someone might think I'm too much. Someone might not think I'm enough. Someone might think I'm too loud. Someone might think it's so subjective, isn't it? We see each
Yeah.
other through each other's lenses. And if we can admit it to ourselves, we're not drawn towards everyone,
Mm.
are we? We don't
Yeah.
like everyone or want to befriend everyone or spend time investing in the relationship of everyone that we come across.
Yeah. So we don't like everything or everyone. Everyone says no sometimes, and so it would be an unreasonable thing to expect other people to
Yeah.
like us all the time. And I love the idea,
Yeah.
that reminder of just let's focus on the people that do get us, the people that do like us, the people that are on that
Yeah.
same frequency or whatever it is, and stop wasting so much energy on the people that are never going to like
Yeah.
you because they remind you of their cousin that was mean to them or something.
Yeah, who knows? But then sometimes the people really close to you, those family members, those friends that know you the best, sometimes even they will misunderstand you and even they might take the wrong way. So, how can we even then more so cultivate that sense of acceptance in ourselves? That's the hardest thing to do, isn't it? That even in the face of being misunderstood by someone close to you, or yeah, taken the wrong way, or someone doesn't get you, or you've taken that really brave step to be open about something and they don't respond in the way that you hoped or thought they might. How can we cultivate that sense of, at the end of the day, I know that my experience is valid regardless of whether someone gets it or not. And that's the most powerful thing that we can do is try to find ways to, yeah, feel safe in ourselves and come back to ourselves.
Yeah, yeah, and I think, yeah, I'm just thinking about how it doesn't feel like it's okay for us to sort of make mistakes or to be imperfect or to fail. It's like I really noticed this a while ago. I did some Brazilian jiu-jitsu classes for like six
Amazing.
months, and there was tons of my partner kind of slightly forced me to go. I don't think I would have gone without him, but there's so much falling over. There's so much like being really bad in the beginning, and I found that experience of being bad at something and also like weirdly falling over a lot. That kind of the falling over was like the
It's
physical
quite
manifestation
destabilizing,
of
isn't it? It makes you feel like a
yeah,
kid.
yeah, yeah. But that
Mm.
was like the physical manifestation of like, oh, you're not very good at this. And there was something like within me that found that just very painful, honestly. And I went through loads of resistance of like not wanting to do it. But yeah, I had to sort of come to this acceptance of like, it's okay to be bad at stuff. It's okay to fail. It's okay to like fall over. And that was such a lesson for me. But I think so many of us experience that. And in our culture, it's kind of not okay to fail. We don't really often hear the stories of failure, but I know that's another kind of topic that you talk about in the book, the kind of
Yeah,
the
that
fear
we're
of
gonna
failure.
fail, and actually, the fear of failure can really restrict your life experiences. And the think about, I don't know, I can think about in my own life the jobs I haven't gone for because I'd assumed I wouldn't get them. The experiences that I haven't pursued because I assumed I wouldn't be very good at it. And actually, it's through failure that we really learn and grow. It's through failure that actually, yeah, that we can kind of level up and step up and learn. And no one learns anything really from doing everything well. If we go into things straight off the bat, we're great at it. Where's the fun? Because often the fun is in the failure, the learning is in the failure, the being, allowing yourself to be supported by people is often in those moments of failure. And I think, yeah, we can really restrict our lives if we allow that fear of failure to dictate what we try. Because who knows, it might actually go well and it might go right and you might learn something amazing and you might develop a new skill or you might get a promotion or experience a new part of the world. No, you went away, didn't you? And to Bali, and am I right?
Yeah, that was
Yeah,
in
and you
Bali
moved
that was
away,
doing
and
that. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, and actually, if you'd have thought, oh, this would be an amazing opportunity for us, but actually, it might not go. It might be difficult. It might be lonely for a bit. We might not make the friends we hope to make. So let's just not bother. Let's not do it. Let's stay safe. Then actually, there's a huge amount of life experience, the richness of some of those connections and yeah, some of the things that you tried that they wouldn't exist.
As you were talking just then, like a part of my mind just kind of was blown slightly, and I started to see this sense of like actually life would be really boring if you were perfect at everything and everything
Oh
constantly went
gosh, yeah.
well and like nothing was difficult, nothing like actually that's not probably not what we should really be aiming for. Actually the depths of things and the sort of even the kind of the challenging things are what make life interesting and kind of overcoming challenges eventually, hopefully, or making progress with things. That's kind of what's really satisfying rather than things being just smooth and easy all the time.
Yeah. I've got a friend who's online dating at the minute, and she's had to really kind of grapple with this sense of, I'm going to probably go on lots of dates that won't go very well. But actually, with each one, she's growing in confidence. She's learning more about herself. She's, you know, just bringing more of her authentic self to the table, literally to the table at the bar or wherever they meet up, each time she goes and meets someone. And, if she'd have just met the right person on that very first experience of that dating app, then actually she would have missed out on so much. So I also think sometimes it's just really recognizing that actually failing at something doesn't mean that we're a failure, because I think often that's what happens, isn't it? We fail at something and we enable it to make this huge, rather strong statement about the entirety of who we are. Like if she was to go on one date and it wasn't to go well, and she would say, right, that's it, I'm doomed, I'm a failure at dating, then that's a massive statement about who she is that of course is going to make her not want to go and do it again. So it's the power of the statements that we allow our failures to make about the entirety of our identity, instead of thinking, oh, you know what, that didn't go so well, worth a shot, learn something from that. that's very different to that shaming ourselves of, oh, I shouldn't have done that. I'm a failure. Why did I do that? Of course, we're not going to try it again if we know that if it doesn't go so well, we're just going to get bullied internally.
I've noticed there's a bit of a, I don't know if it's a kind of a trend on Instagram at the minute, where people are sharing their museum of failures, I think they're calling it, and putting
Nice.
all of these things. And it's quite often kind of influencers and things who you may have perceptions of that they're just, you know, perfect in every way and never experience setbacks. And then you read these things that they're kind of failures, quote unquote failures. And it's quite like, I was quite like, it's freeing. It's kind of surprising sometimes because I think
Yeah.
we can project this idea onto other people that are online, and it's just that good reminder that yeah, you don't know what someone's journey has been until they maybe
Yeah.
share it. Or
Yeah.
I quite like reading like if you read people's autobiographies, like some of the successful kind of people's autobiographies, and you hear actually, you know, they were really struggling at this point or they went through this, and just that reminder that it's so normal and human to go through
Yes.
that.
Yeah, and I think this is the challenge of the digital world, is that we have exposure to so many people's successes, right? But not on that one-to-one level. So it's not like a colleague or the CEO of the business that you work at and you've seen them grow through the ranks. You've seen the challenges, and you've seen some of the failures, and you've seen some of the projects that didn't go so well, or your friend who's maybe really successful, and you've seen the behind the scenes. You've seen their how it's challenged their relationship. You've seen how they've had moments of really questioning what they're doing. But when we're just seeing this kind of surface level mass success without the story, as is often the way with social media, you know, it's understandable that we can end up thinking that there's something wrong with us along the journey as we stumble and trip and struggle with the growth and the challenge, and it's messy and it has a cost, and all of those things are actually a really normal part of the process, which is why I think it's so nice to see that, people sharing those failures.
Yeah, yeah. I remember a while ago, I don't know if it was kind of some kind of business coach talking about he basically said, 4 out of every 5 things that I try in my business don't succeed.
Yeah.
And when I heard that, that was so freeing because it made me realize, yeah, a lot of the things that we're going to try, you know, whether you have your own business or not, just in life, you know, often they're not going to go as you expected. They're not going to go perfectly. They may not
Yeah.
work. And so just having that, yeah, embracing how normal that is, I think is quite
Yeah.
freeing as well.
Yeah, I remember having to deconstruct an entire business, part of my business that I built up that was actually doing really, really well, because I did not realize there was a conflict in trademark. I didn't know to check that. I didn't know to trademark the name of what I'd produced. I didn't know because I'm just learning, and you know I basically had to dismantle this whole thing that was thriving in the space of half a day, so someone didn't come after me with a lawsuit. And I think you're so right. It's so easy. We visibly see the successes, but we don't know what didn't work out. We don't know what had to be pulled. We don't know what fell at the first hurdle. We don't know what might look like it's thriving on the surface through brilliant marketing, but actually behind the scenes is maybe making a loss and keeping someone awake at night.
Mm,
And
mm.
to remind ourselves that these things are true is pretty tiring. It takes us to be able to coach ourselves through these moments of comparison or through these moments of assumption that everything is as it seems. And I think when we're frazzled and burnt out, as we often are kind of teetering on the edge of, we don't have that headspace to be able to do that when we're scrolling through social media, because we've got nothing left in the tank, and it feels like the best way and the only way to expend some rest time is to do that. We're not there thinking all is not as it seems. Don't forget, this isn't the full picture of that person's life. We're just kind of consuming, and our brain
Yeah,
is thinking, it's wired to believe what it sees.
yeah.
So it's this whole challenge, this whole layer of challenge that we face.
Maybe we need to have that, like on Facebook, things have a little fact check
Yes.
symbol if something's, you know, been fact checked. We should have fact check. This person's using a filter, and They're not
Yeah.
always on holiday, even though it seems like it, or
I
I don't
know.
know. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be great, wouldn't it? If we could just have it like caveated under everything, because it's so exhausting to keep doing that for yourself, which is why I think we have to try and have, yeah, healthy boundaries around these things, but it's so hard.
Mm, mm, mm. Another thing that really resonated with me from your book was I am not good enough. And I know you mentioned how, in personal development and self-help, we're very often, or historically have tried to remind ourselves that we're good enough. Tell yourself you're good enough in the mirror as you look at yourself. But actually, what's yeah, share about this idea of, how can we embrace not being good enough and how that can be
Not being good
freeing.
enough. Yeah. I think for many years I held up that, that kind of banner that says, "Don't worry about me. I've got this. I've got this." And having had a mum that rarely ever sat down, still doesn't really ever sit down, I just sense that a good way to love people is just to kind of be on top of everything, meet everyone's needs, be good. And I think that was what I was trying to attain to. And ultimately, it just led to me feeling secretly, and then less secretly as it kind of intensified, just depressed and anxious, and just feeling just burnt out, and just feeling like I was a failure in my relationships, and because I just couldn't sustain it. And then I think I had kids, and then it just further intensified that calling upon my resources. So I further felt like a failure. And yeah, that flag, that waving flag of like, I've got this, don't worry about me, just became heavier and heavier. And I started realizing that actually I did really need people. And the most freeing thing, that the shift that happened, was when I kind of like forced to say, like, actually I don't have this at all, I'm not okay, like I need people. And I think as a therapist, I basically just legitimized my role in life as being the helper and the carer. Like, it was a way for me to make it really official. Like, if I'm a therapist, then I can just do it as a job, not just as a person, as an actual job as well, and be paid for helping people. And really, it was just really humbling for me to realize, what, the reason I don't feel good enough is because actually I'm not good enough to sustain this. I'm not good enough to fulfill all of these roles. I'm not good enough to meet all of these needs because I'm a human. My resources are limited. I've got my own stuff going on. I'm tired, and I'm not, I'm just feeling my way through like everyone else. And that's just the truth of it. I think is we are limited human beings. We're good enough for limited standards. We're good enough. We're imperfect. So we're good enough for imperfect standards. I think expecting ourselves to be, yeah, anything more than that is just, we're setting ourselves up for guilt and shame and failure and all the other things that happen when we just don't feel like we're deserving of support. Yeah, and perfectionism just does not translate to parenting at all. I learnt that the hard way. And I'm so much messier now. I've never been so much more undone, but I've never felt so fulfilled and so connected to people and so strengthened by the strengths of others, by acknowledging my own weaknesses and my own need. And it's just, yeah, it's one of these things that's just completely transformed how I live life. And it's a mess.
Mm.
It's a better, it's a better way.
Yeah, and even that kind of, I guess, the phrase "I am good enough," good enough for what or for who? And you obviously talk about this in the book, but it's like, what are we comparing that with? It's kind of
Yeah.
very amorphous. It's like we're
Yeah.
never going to feel like we are good enough, so we may as well kind of accept that we're not. Um, yeah, it's a lot more. Yeah, it feels like a weight off.
Yeah, it's just
Just to
knowing your
embrace that.
limits. It's knowing your limits and seeing them not as failures, but just facts of your humanness, and know that you wake up a different person every day. Like, we don't know really, no matter how clever our watches may be, we don't know the depth of our sleep, or how dreams, the dreams that we had might have actually been a bit emotionally exhausting for us and we're not aware of that, or how we haven't yet processed that argument that we had with a friend last week, and that's, we're carrying that on our shoulders. Or we just have different resources every single day, and yeah, we're just not linear. And I think, I remember one of the biggest signs that I'd kind of addressed this was that after having my second kid, it was very much like I was holding on to that perfectionism, and I was having it kind of ripped out my hands because everything was chaotic and there was no routine, and I was just really like having a tug of war with this, and just had to come to this realization that I'm all I can do is the best I can with what I have, and I need support along the way. After having my third child, having gone through all of that, I remember sending a friend a message. She was going to come over and meet the baby, and I wanted to say, I'd typed out, "Don't come over, I'm a mess." I just didn't want her to come over because I was just a hormonal mess. The house was chaos. And I remember thinking, no, Anna, this is where you were. That's not where you are anymore. You need her to step into this mess with you. And I just deleted the don't. And I sent her the message that said, "Come over, I'm a mess." And she came, and I was a mess. But it was amazing. And she was there. And, I think that's it. Sometimes we just want to be wrapped up neatly for the world, when actually we need people to stand with us in the not good enoughness. We need people to hug us and encourage us and cheer us along the way, even if they don't have all the answers, so we know we're not alone in it. And I think that's it, really, with no, I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough for perfect standards, because I'm human and I have limits. But amazingly, other people have strengths where I'm weak. So,
Mhm.
yeah.
So powerful, so powerful. Um, the sort of one of the last questions I was going to ask you is about, and you put this in the end of the book, because I think you want to ease us into this one, because it probably is one of the biggest ones. And obviously, you touched on your own experience as a child losing your sister, but the fear of either us dying or someone that we love dying. And as I was reading the book, I almost felt like, even though I have to say, like, probably I have thoughts about that every day. I don't get into sort of super anxious thoughts about it anymore. I have done in the past, but it
Yeah.
does come into my mind every single day. That sort of thoughts of something bad happening to my son or to my partner or someone else that I love, or even to me. And yet with that chapter, I was always like, I don't want to look at this. Maybe it's going to like jinx it or something if I look at this.
Yeah.
But actually, and I felt kind of emotional kind of reading it, but actually I realized that by pushing it away, it's there anyway. So I can push it
Yes.
away, but it's coming in. It's coming
Yeah.
in. So yeah, I'd love to just hear a bit about your thoughts on this. And is
Yeah.
it our biggest fear? Do you think that's going to
I
happen?
think it often is. And I think, many of the other fears in the book, the other truths in the book, that, bad things will happen, even that some people won't like us, it comes down to that sense of abandonment, that we'll lose people, that there will be people in our lives who aren't there in a friendship sense or in a support sense, so it's not necessarily the end of a life, but it's just the end of a friendship or a support network. And yeah, that feeling of being left alone or leaving others. And I think so, yeah, I think a lot of the anxieties do come down to the fear of losing someone or the fear of dying. And I think one of the most powerful tips that I share in the book is to just listen to people's stories. There are people that have walked through the fires of your worst case scenarios. And I think about one of my biggest fears being to lose one of my kids. And then I look at my mum, who lost a daughter really painfully. And I think, man, she's living a full life. She's thriving. She's built a life around that grief. She has so much purpose. She's supported so many families going through similar things. And actually, I think what we often don't hear enough about is that post traumatic growth. What we often don't hear enough about is those stories of how people have found a way to not just survive, but actually have found joy and found happiness. And that's just become a part of who they are. I think sometimes we just get stuck at that, oh my gosh, that pain of grief is too much. I cannot even comprehend. Of course, but we can withstand pain. We can journey through grief. And I think, again, grief, how often do we see people journey through it in a really healthy way in our culture? There is so much numbing and avoidance that goes on that is actually interrupting the grief process, because grief is proactive and it's a productive process that with each wave, and for anyone that's been through grief, it does feel like this wave that is rolling over you. It can just be doing the washing up and suddenly there's this wave that feels almost intolerable and excruciating. But we can learn, if we don't numb it and sidestep it and distract it, we can learn and grow in confidence that wave, it peaks and then it subsides like a labor contraction, and it has purpose and it's doing something within us and it's passing through us. And I think, yes, seeking out stories and experiences from people that have grieved in a really healthy way is also a really positive thing to do. But knowing that, and like anchoring yourself in the now, you know what? We're going to go through grief in our lives. We're going to go through loss. That's the only certain thing about being human. But how, instead of finding that whole kind of finding us bracing ourselves, like how can we actually soften into what is true now? And I talk in the book about these two types of hugs that I give my kids and my husband and people I love in my life. And the one kind is like this white knuckle grip, right? And I'm just thinking, oh my gosh, I love you so much. I'm so scared. I wish it would be safer just not to love anyone, because then I wouldn't be risking grief, because love is vulnerable. Like, love is a brave thing to do and we can't help ourselves. And then there's that other kind of hug that is not so white knuckled, and I'm just like enjoying it. I'm just like, oh, this is so special. And I think as we address this fear, and it will always be a fear because it will always be hard and painful loss, so it's not unfounded. But as we just try to find new ways of accepting this and reframing it, actually, it just frees us up to enjoy what we have now. And I think the most powerful conversation that I ever had with my mum, and I will never forget it, is when I said to her, I was like, Mum, do you ever just kind of wish that you'd stopped at 2 kids? Because then you wouldn't have ever had to lose your daughter, my sister. And what she said to me, she was like, Anna, she said, I would never give a day back. It was, it was worth it all. I would never give a day back of loving her. It was worth all the pain. And I hold that in mind when I feel that white knuckle grip. And I think if my mum could have gone through that and at the end of it all say that it was worth every day of loving her, the pain of losing her, then I can jump right in to what I have, despite the vulnerability and the risk. Because if the worst was to ever happen, I would be glad that I lent into that love whilst I could. And I find that so freeing in a way, that we can do hard things and we can journey through painful times, and we will. So how can we love and live harder?
Yeah, I had kind of goosebumps when you were sharing that about your mum. And
Yeah.
when I saw, again, I think you shared that on one of your videos on Instagram, and I cried
Yeah.
my eyes out after I saw that,
Yeah.
just of the kind of the truth of it and the sort of the love behind that. It's just really moving. Um, yeah. So one question that I always ask people on this podcast is there something that you are struggling with yourself right now? And how are you moving through it? Or how are you kind of coping with it or overcoming it?
Yeah. So the thing I'm really struggling with is, I know the boundaries that I want to set for myself. And for me, they involve not going on my phone in the morning before the kids go to school, and actually putting it in a different room in the afternoons when they're back and I'm doing homework and it's chaos. And, I don't want that distraction. I don't want them to see me on my phone that much. And the other thing is that I don't go on social media when I wake up at 5:45 and my husband's alarm goes off. And what I do is I do like 10 minutes of meditation, 10 minutes of yoga, and 10 minutes of journaling. And I know that that's so good for me. It's so good for my soul. When the chaos begins at like 6:45, 7 a.m., I know that I've given myself something. But the bit of me that wants to sabotage all of these boundaries and these intentions that I have is sometimes so strong, even more so when I'm hormonal, and like I just have such little impulse control. So for me, that's what I'm struggling with is I know what's good for me. I know what's good for my family. I know what's good for my body, for my health, for my mind. But so often when it's actually comes down to that decision point, I sabotage it. I open Instagram before I even, get out of bed. And I'm like, why am I doing this? And I know I'm doing it. And I'm like, don't do this, Anna. It's going to, like, I'm basically, I imagine this big bubble over my house. And when I open my email or my Instagram or the internet, I'm like popping that bubble. I've like invited the world into that kind of sacred space of mine. And I hate that I'm doing it, and I notice myself doing it. So I think what I'm really trying to do to protect this is like parent myself in those moments and to have that little internal voice going, Anna, I know this is really what you want to do, but it's not really aligning with your values. That actually what you really need is to just get on that yoga mat or just put your phone in the other room and just go and be with the kids. And it's trying to coach myself lovingly and firmly, and not that voice that's like, for goodness sake, Anna, what's wrong with you? You know what's good for you. Why are you doing this? Why are you sabotaging this? That kind of harsh inner critic. So that's what I'm struggling with right now. Yeah, is trying to be aligned with my values, and also just suspect that I'm a bit frazzled, and that makes it harder to make good decisions. So having grace and compassion for myself whilst being firm is a difficult line to balance.
Mm. Mm. I'm sure everyone has something that's a bit like that. Like, we
Yeah,
know we should be eating more vegetables or drinking more water or reading more, before bed instead of watching Netflix. And yet sometimes it can feel like the hardest thing to do. And
yeah,
I think that's such a, yeah, potent reminder to coach ourselves in a kind way about that, because
yeah,
we go into that inner critic, we make ourselves wrong, and actually, does that help? Probably not. Actually, the best way to sort of change that is with kindness and letting go of that, the perfectionism that says we need to do that every
yeah.
time. But I'm
Yes,
definitely going to hold that image
there's
in your
that.
mind of the bubble, like the bubble.
Yes, I
And actually,
love
when I go
I
on my
love that
phone, it
little.
pops that
Yes, it
bubble.
pops the bubble because suddenly you don't
Yeah.
know, you could open your phone and see something that actually really triggers anxiety in you, or a message that actually you really want to reply to. So that's all you can think about. And I think the other thing that I'm trying to do with this is not just be black and white about, oh, I've screwed it up now, I'm just going to stay in bed for the next half an hour and mess around on my phone. I might think, okay, so you no longer have time to do the journaling, but actually, if you get out of bed now, you can still do the meditation. You can still do the yoga. All is not lost.
Mm.
You can still do something that's nurturing for yourself, even if it's not everything you plan. So try not to be defeatist and be like, oh, well, you've blown it now. You might as well just carry on. You know, yeah,
Yeah,
you've
yeah.
scuppered that bit, but actually, you can still do this.
So good, so good. Yeah, love that. Thank you so much for everything you shared. I just think you're brilliant.
Oh,
Where can people
feeling is
find out more
very
about you?
mutual.
And thank you. Yeah,
Oh,
where can people
just
find out about you?
just Instagram, Anna Mathur, and everything. Everything is from there. But Chloe, I love all the work you've done. I've followed you for years now, and just so grateful for how open you are about anxiety and how freely you give so much away as well through your free bits and pieces that you put out into the world. And I recommend so many people your way over the years. So thank you.
Oh, thank you so much for that. That's brilliant. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.